Next is Continuum Labs.
Chairman and committee, thank you for your time. This is going to be somewhat of a different report, and I'm going to share some things with you to give you a more detailed outline of things that we are doing specific to financials, projections, and our go-to-market strategy. Part of the slides that I'm sharing with you now come from a larger deck. It is one that we have been using talking with investment makers, venture capitals, super angels. This deck, this complete business plan, and due to Section 288.075 and the areas of confidentiality and any precedents we need to say, I've redacted some of the pages. In the event that anyone on this board wants to sign an NDA, I'd be more than happy to sit down and go with you through the entire deck, which includes detailed projections for the remaining part of the year 2014 and 2015. I've handed also out this deck for your reading because some of the font and so forth is small. But I want to remind the board that what we have done over the last 2 years is build something that is a competitive product. This competitive product is truly designed as a communications platform that will allow enterprises, families, and others to communicate with patients and will allow for the coordination of care. Remember that the best form of treatment is intervention, and the primary and the original source of intervention has always been the family. This is a slide that shows us where we are between 3 years in terms of the product mix of revenue. As you know, we perform other tasks and derive other revenues from operations in 2013, but a large portion of our funding certainly has come from the grant. We believe that as we shift into the sales and marketing phase, which we have done a few months ago, we will now start to see additional clients from the consumer and enterprise basis, and that they will start to then shape a 2014 revenue stream that will look similar to the one that you have in the middle upper circle. And then you will see that we anticipate the phasing out nearly of a professional services component, though it may or may not happen, but predominantly be an 88 to 12 mixture between enterprise sales, which make up the hospitals and national payers, other organizations like large employers that are trying to provide a level of communications with patients and their families, and back and forth. Areas in our projections, again, this is a slide for investors and VCs, is there are projections like the enterprise, these boxes down on the far left, that we have not looked and tried to put a figure on. The reason being is that as an investor, you want to focus on the areas of primary in your operations, but we recognize that in deployment to an enterprise environment, to which I'll get to later, that actually some of these boxes already do, are starting to take shape. We've even in our calculations have accounted for not 100% retention, but meaning that 20% of people will leave one plan or whatever, and so we have factored in cushions. This is something that I shared with you at the last meeting, but we have continued to refine our pricing model. One of the things that we have now is a subscription service in our plan. That is something that's being eliminated, so in 2.0, the application itself will be free as we now push to more of a professional services component, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But recognize, or I'll draw your attention to the top 3 boxes. We are a platform company, and we do offer the ability for enterprises to communicate with patients and their families. And so that goes through the LifeDash platform, which is critical. But it also gives the enterprise the ability to connect and exchange messages and information with patients and their family without directly touching the CareSync application, which is critical in an enterprise architecture. And then we certainly have the CareSync Plus services component that we spoke greatly about, and is a major component of our objectives locally. And then, of course, the application continues to evolve to drive engagement of the patient and their family to use the application. I want to bring your attention to the fact that when we talk about market, whether you're bottling something or what the market trends are doing, if we look at the fact that CareSync makes patient visits better, meaning that if we create a piece of technology that gives patients information from their charts, their visits, their health care at the point of care, they're more confident. And so if we look at that as possibly a value of transaction, you have to look at what that market looks like. So you have to recognize there's about 150 million people in the United States alone who have some form of chronic disease. This chronic nature drives them to have more visits than, say, a healthy person who would only go for episodic sickness or a yearly exam. When you look at the number of lives that are affected, you start to see that revenues quickly generate from what we are proposing in terms of the use of the application and professional services, which we call CareSync Plus. If you look at just adults, this does not include anyone 18 or younger, that we had about 1.2 billion with the big visits last year. And so this creates lots and lots of interactions, which hospitals and others throughout the healthcare organization are very attentive of the fact that much of the waste that happens in healthcare is because the visits were not effective. So whether it was a patient who did not hear or understand, or whether it was a hospital who treated somebody and then discharged them and they did not understand, and then they come back to the hospital situation, these are the things that healthcare reform is attempting through carrots and sticks to enforce a better utilization of the United States healthcare services. So we recognize that there is immense opportunity to capitalize on these transactions. This is to the next and my last slide. I want to draw your attention to this, and I do consider this to be sensitive information, but I recognize that many of you have questions that get questions that you're not able to ask. So I'm going to show you a snapshot of what a sample of 49,000 users on our platform does and what it specifically does for the county here in Hardin. We recognize through our enterprise and consumer sales plan that we have spent the last 2 months working on in terms of understanding who our prospects are, who and how we get to those prospects, who they are, and we have been in meetings with representative companies in the national multi-state specialty hospital large enterprise scenario. They continue to invite us back, and we have as much, and in some conversations have even talked about a single $20 million block of business. And so when you look at national payers who are spending $5 to $10 billion in care and recognize that a lot of it goes to waste, they need to be competitive on their premium. So when we come in, it's an opportunity for them to communicate with patients and their families with the existing systems they have in place. They're all ears. And so when we give prices, we talk in the hundreds per year per person. It's a lot less than a $20,000 readmission to the hospital because they forgot to take their heart meds and they needed to be stabilized. So the economics from a national payer alone have been very enticing for us to use more modeling that addresses the enterprise need. And we've actually consulted with people who are experts in the enterprise sales cycle. I would like to draw your attention to the last line. One of the reasons, and I know that this is a big investment, and I know that that in itself raises a great deal of anxiety, and I know that we talk in a language that is not native to most people outside the technology industry anywhere, regardless of where you live. If you do not talk in that language, it can be confusing. When I was hearing PHP and ASP.NET, that's my love language. I knew exactly what he's talking about, but that's because I do it. But recognize that this was the intention all along for us, was to take the investment, put it into a business model that would be an economic development opportunity locally. We built much of that off-site because that's where the engineers and experts are. They were already in place. But we created a business model which, a couple of years ago, as we pivoted to what happened in healthcare reform and so forth, I believe has all been providential. Recognize that that number down there, that 60+% of every revenue dollar that we take from an agreement with an enterprise alone, or even a direct consumer, will be spent in this town. The reason is that we designed the business to be a labor-intensive service. Much as Doug just said, that there is opportunity for services, and the biggest opportunity that there is in healthcare is that nobody understands it, meaning that it is not a natural language for most patients to understand healthcare terminology, but it's also a whole nother level for their family to understand it, because most often they do not get to spend the time with the physician that the actual patient did. So we have a language problem and a communication problem. And so if you're healthcare spending $2.8 trillion on trying to deliver healthcare this year alone, you recognize that a lack of good communication fosters a lot of anxiety, and it fosters a lot of inefficiency. The practical way to solve that is to get the information to the people who need it in a way that they can consume it. One of the reasonable ways that we have to do this is to hire people and train them as medical records specialists, and that the records come here securely, and that those get transcribed back into the application. It would be like somebody taking all of your business cards from your desk and putting them into a piece of software for you. It would be a service, and you would use the information from those business cards more readily, so now that they've digitalized it. That's what we're doing with CareSync. The nice thing about the business card example is, let's say that you're the president of the organization, or you're the national sales manager. Your ability to share those business cards with the rest of the organization helps them utilize that information. The family's no different. Healthcare is overwhelming to many people. So we recognize, not because it's just our optimism, but from our pilot users and our new users. Look at Facebook. Look at what people are saying about CareSync. They love it. We now are in scaling phase. And so when you look at the last slide, we have 15 people, and I tried to memorize their names, Mr. Samuels, if you want me to quote them after the meeting, that these are people that are live in Hardee County and work at Tech River and on this project. If we get the number of users that I documented on the first screen, that is 1/4 of what we project to have in year 2015 at the end. If we are successful, to which we are trying to scale that in terms of being successful, which usually the same problem exists for other companies. It's about sales and marketing. It is about educating the people that the product exists. We are looking at nearly 200,000 users by 2015. That would be a great problem to have, but you need to understand that those are hundreds of jobs that would be generating payrolls 20, 30, 40, 50 million. These are not 10 jobs, and these are not 20. So please recognize the fact that anyone in their right mind would be nervous about the size of this, whether you're worried about it failing or whether you're not succeeding. It is a big project, and that's what I think providentially has happened 2 years ago. Was an opportunity to do something in technology, in healthcare, both huge segments of our economy, create a business model that needed lots of labor. I think we did that. And what we've seen from the hundreds of users that we've had use it and comment back to us is that they like it. They didn't understand it at first, but once they're able to interact with their chart, they become a new and confident patient. And the only reason that I drive that home is because it's no different than a cream that is used by somebody or some salsa that someone likes to eat on chips. It reinforces the fact that once they were educated on it, they didn't leave, they wanted more. And so I believe, you'll look at the draw and you'll see that I have not, that there are line items simply missing. Meaning, we didn't ask for reimbursement. You'll see that sales and marketing continues to increase, and we spent a lot more than that. I continue to put in money into this over the draw. I am committed to the project. I am encouraged by our research, and I'm encouraged by our pipeline, which I'll be more than happy to share with you under NDA. I will tell you that we are meeting with multi-billion-dollar companies who finally see something that is engineered as a real communications platform with a labor force that will go and get the records that insurance companies can't get, and gives them some optimism about how they are going to contain costs, which is predominantly the big stick for Obamacare, is contain costs. And so they are looking for any reasonable solution in the marketplace. Thank you for your time.
Just quickly, you have the draw request in front of you for this month. I just want to remind you, it totals roughly $291,000. This draw request, as well as the one from last month, were the total for the $600,000 that you allocated in addition to the $3 million. Mr. Samuels, I didn't forget about you asking for a report on the deliverables this month about the project. But through discussions with Bill and Ken, what we decided was their contract for year 2, even though it was a 3-year agreement, their contract for year 2 ends this month. So I would ask the board today to have discussions in regards to the 3rd year funding, which is totals $970,000, roughly $970,000, because their year 2 contract ends this month. So what Bill, Ken, and I decided was that I am definitely going to make a report on the deliverables. We'll have that to you guys a lot prior, hopefully 2 weeks prior to the next board meeting where you will negotiate the contract. But Ken would ask for you guys today after discussion what you want to do with the 3rd year contract for the original 3-year term, because this 2-year one ends at the end of this month.
What are you looking for us to do right now?
That's completely up to you. Discussion on, what specifically you want to see in the new contract, what terms you want, a discussion about the current deliverables. We need some direction as to how to proceed because this contract does end. So we need some form of direction, either if it's just, as Bill and Ken to produce something to bring back to you guys at the next board meeting for final draft. Questions for Travis. I don't have anything specific, but I know that something needs to be done as far as the contract ending.
Starting next month.
Right.
Questions, comments here on the board?
How much money are you talking about for that contract, the $900,000?
Yes, sir. The total for the 3-year agreement was 7.25. The first year was 2.6 million. The second year has ended up totaling 3.6 million. So there's a little under $1 million left when it's all added out. That's a 3-year contract.
Yeah, the thing that if they're going to write a new contract, I've got the contracts here for CareSync and Continuum Labs, and I've got the things that they're supposed to do that they haven't done. Why put in another contract if they're not going to be made to follow the contract we've got? That's my point. There's nobody apparently on board that says, this is what you agreed to. You haven't done it, but it's okay. We're going to keep giving you the money anyway. That's what bothers me. I mean, you can write contracts all day, but if it's not going to be enforced, there's not even a need to write a contract. Just give them the money.
I mean, that's a discussion that you guys have to have. When we did a report a few months ago about, I'd listed out specifically what the deliverables were, and gave you guys updates as to where Continuum stood on their deliverables, and I think that was maybe 3 months ago. So you did have some form of an update. That's kind of what I'm planning to do again, to get you guys to know where they are on the current deliverables prior to negotiating the new contract.
Okay. Thank you.
I'd like to ask Travis a couple of questions. Travis, I like to see some projections like this. You know, this is more what I've been looking for. And I think as a group, we've been pretty supportive to you, donated a lot of money, and we think you've got potential to have a great business. But I'd like to see a little bit more details. I don't need names, but I'd like to know, you know, within the last month, we talked to 3 venture capitalists. One's asked us back, and just give us a percentage, basically, of how people are accepting this. Okay?
Okay, I'll be more than happy to do that.
Because like I said before, you can have the greatest product in the world, but you got to be able to market it. And I'm just seeing if we're heading in the right direction on that avenue.
We are. I think 2 things. I'm glad you asked the question, and I want to give you as much of an organized feedback I can. There's 2 things. So one is you ask yourself, is the product there? Do people like it? So did they eat the salsa and say, yum, I want more? CareSync was built, and we had people saying yum. Then we had Android people saying, well, I want salsa, where's mine? And so we started to fill in strategically where our technology was to prepare us to be as attractive as possible for venture capital, investment bankers, angels, super angels, family funds, etc. The reason that I just mentioned all of those names are those we have met with representatives from each of those segments of the investment community. Matter of fact, there'll be 4 meetings today by other people who work at Continuum with people. There are 6 alone scheduled this, well, 7, including myself, who is meeting with a multi-billion-dollar communications company who has reserved $500 million to invest in healthcare. So these are, well, you know the names. What do they ask for to make an educated decision? First off, they say, do you have a team that's been on the end zone before? That's not my term, that's their term. So have you made touchdowns before? Have you created something and exited? The answer is obviously yes. It's Googleable. You know, I have created a company in this sector, not in something else, but the same thing they were in. I took them out of money, multiplied it by many times over, and sold it, and it went to a publicly traded company. The next is, do you have a team in place that could execute or maximize the investment? A year ago, I submitted a nice kind of coffee table book that showed a bunch of the names of people that work on this project. They are experts in healthcare and technologies and professional services. So I'm running through the investment community's checklist as they, no different than a banker would sort of kind of do an assessment for a loan. Then they ask about the product. So is there a problem in the market? You know, is healthcare good or bad? Is it broken? We all know the answer to that. What is your solution? We do this. Well, what is the size of the market? Well, it's in the upper multi-billions. If you look at some estimates of, say, over $1 trillion, well, $1.6 trillion alone was spent in management of chronic disease last year alone. There's significant opportunity. Then they look at the ability to go to market and scale. So as we have shopped or talked to other people about investing, it's not about we have an idea and we want to build it. We want you to scale the idea to a national sales and marketing opportunity. And I will tell you that we all get invited back for additional meetings. Some people ask for more granular numbers. Some don't. Some have to get other partners involved to have additional meetings. And other investment bankers have tried to get us to let them represent us in doing a national search for people who invest in healthcare. Lastly, I would say, in terms of just trends, is that this year's first 2 quarters or the last year's 2 quarters, is that investment into healthcare IT is up 23%. Other industries have not at all joined that kind of growth. But technology has, as itself, as a whole sector, but as a sub-sector of health, of IT, of being healthcare, it is up 23% just in the first 6 months. So we have a product. We've done it before. We're a team that can do it. We have people that like it. A market opportunity, and the size of the opportunity is into the, billions. And they can see it, touch it, feel it, play with it themselves. So we feel optimistic by that, and the ongoing conversations that we have with them, that we did indeed build something that would scale and would have other people share in the support of it growing. Did that answer your question? Because I really didn't want to specifically answer it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. I noticed there is nothing about navigators. How many millions of navigators are going to come in to work with individuals regarding their health care? And the effect on Obamacare, which is going to hit us real soon, and neither has been addressed. So I feel it's pretty tough to conclude anything.
I think that if you talk to experts in healthcare, that you will find that healthcare reform has created great anxiety for all people within the system, including the 40 million uninsured that will join our rolls at the end of the month. That creates 40 million new people that can get a doctor's appointment that will go onto a calendar that will make your appointment that you're trying to get that much later. Our infrastructure in the United States is not even ready for 40 new million people to participate in it if somebody else paying. People have billion-dollar problems to solve. They're looking for legitimate solutions. When you have telecommunications companies and cable stations and everybody else who's saying they're going to reserve $500 million, oh yeah, and by the way, I'm having lunch with them on Friday at 12. They want to talk to us because they see us as a medical communications company. So I take those as a sampling of interest, in that when you speak of navigators, I'm going to assume that you're talking about healthcare coordinators. Some people call navigators, though, they're race of communities and help to try to take these new people that haven't had health insurance, don't have access to technology, and try to say, okay, your primary care doctor's here, you write a script, you go to this pharmacy. Those people are also candidates for that, because remember, the one thing that's very different, and I gave you the competitors, one of the things that's very different about CareSync is that we're allowed to mobilize the family. And so the ability for interveners in the family structure, which is the original intervention that God created from the garden, is that they can intervene as far as they are informed to do so. So when you look at how we structured a medical application that runs locally and so forth, you look at it being as a communication awesomeness, then you have all kinds of people who see healthcare as, will next year be a $3 trillion part of our economy.
I believe it's the navigators are supposed to explain the laws that are coming into place that affect your health care. Like if I'm over 75, which I am, I'm no longer eligible for a certain kind of health care because I'm too old. So the navigators are supposed to be explaining how your health care is going to be affected and what you're going to get, what you're not going to get. And they're supposed to be coming by thousands and thousands of them.
Tens of millions.
I'm all confused.
Well, I think a lot of people are. And if you run a large national payer or state payer, or you're one of the 9 states that are trying they're trying to get the new business that's coming from the federal government as part of this reform. It's called dual eligibility. So you're over 65, so you qualify for Medicare based upon age, but you're also under a certain economic threshold, so you qualify for Medicaid. So you're eligible at 2 levels, and they call them dual eligibilities. If you will look at the informational requirements for dual eligibility, one of the very first requirements that the government put out was for the patient and their family to be able to share information electronically. That's one of our marketing taglines for our software before I even knew that dual eligibility exists. It's a huge problem. And you know what, as a services and technology organization, it's a good place to be, is when people are trying to solve problems, because you need your car washed and you can't do it yourself, you start looking for someone who can. And in healthcare, it's $1 trillion problem. I hope, with all sincerity, you think I've been good stewards of your money. I believe I have, and I believe our crew has worked day and night to create value. We will continue to not only work on the technology. We trained just new 4 CSRs in the last 10 days. It's a great opportunity. I think there's no way that you could have positioned for healthcare reform optimally unless you started doing it years ago. And providentially we did. So I agree with you. Yes, sir.
Travis, I'm certainly not negating anything you've done up to this point, and or anything derogatory. But my concern is that we get this to the point that you're self-sufficient, also that you have a successful business. Therein lies my concern, is that there is roughly $900 or so thousand left on the original grant. And I would like to see, for us to make this decision, or help us make this decision, to be able to see how you view the continuation of your business with just the $900,000. And I'm not asking for that answer today. I know that is something you probably thought through. I'm sure as the president and CEO, you've thought that through. But I'd like for us to be able to envision continuing and getting to you to exist, or the product to be successful.
I can assure you that there are plans in place under various scenarios. And so that is why we started looking at raising additional capital months ago, is it recognized that I don't want to lose momentum, but in various scenarios, for sustainability, may have to create some loss of momentum. So I have chosen to spend a greater deal of the energy in the optimistic story as to we are worth X amount of dollars, Y amount of investment, and we have great momentum and adoption, and we're hiring during the growth phase, versus being in a reduction phase and trying to do the same. So yes, it is my job to think about alternate scenarios, and I have given them attention most assuredly. At the current rate and spend, I still, on my mind, dealing with the cliff that's the end of the year, not the end of the month. And so if we want to create a company that employs hundreds of people in this town, I need to at least not allow the devil his opportunity to completely put out my fire, to focus on the fact that we have a lot of things that we've invested in and try not to lose momentum.
Other questions?